we turn our attention to probably the biggest spotlight in college basketball right now, the Louisville Cardinals. So here is Jeff Greer of the Courier-Journal. We continue our Screen the Screener team preview series here with college basketball with Jeff Greer. Jeff is from the Courier-Journal. He writes for them. He covers the Louisville Cardinal basketball team, and he's been kind enough to come on for a few minutes and preview the team with us. You can follow him on Twitter at Jeff Greer, JEFFGREER_CJ, and he joins us for a few minutes today. Jeff, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you guys?
Very good. And I guess, we got to start with the sort of obvious question about the FBI investigation in college basketball with the recruiting of players. And obviously the sort of stuff is sort of centered around Louisville here recently. It's affected them in a way. Rick Pitino is out and 32-year-old David Padgett is in. He is a former Cardinal player, but it's certainly a difficult spot. And I know his assistants right now are not with him in practice. So I guess we'll start, Jeff. Why do you think Louisville stayed within the program for Coach Padgett with limited experience? And what are you hearing about the status of the other coaches right now as Louisville has already started practicing?
Well, we'll start with the coaches, the other coaches. They are meeting with the interim athletic director today. I would be surprised at this point if they are retained by Louisville, just because of the sort of dark cloud surrounding those two, and also Rick Pitino, who has already been put on administrative leave, and the university is moving on the process of firing him for cause. So they, their status is pretty murky, but I would say it's unlikely to continue where they stay, with Louisville, but we'll find out soon here. But as far as, David Padgett, I think there's a couple reasons for that, and I totally get it. I'm not from here, so, I've sort of experienced both sides of this whole thing where, obviously I've been here now for 3 or 4 years, and I understand this fan base and understand that they were freaking out because all of this stuff happened less than, I think it was, 5 days before Louisville had hoped to start practicing. And the players were very concerned, and I don't want to go so far as to say they were threatening anything by any stretch, but they were very concerned that it wouldn't be David Padgett, and they really, really wanted him to just be the familiar older brother type to kind of take over the program regardless of his experience. He knows them. He knows their tendencies. He's worked really closely with some of their big guys, especially, and so they know him, and they know that he's a former player. He has not been implicated in any of the scandals that have come up so far at Louisville. Now, the flip side to that is, and this is where a lot of people who are not from here have chimed in via text message or phone call or Twitter or whatever it is, and asked me, how could Louisville go with someone who either knew about all of this stuff and wasn't implicated, or didn't know about all of this stuff and was oblivious to some cheating that was going on. And I think those are valid questions. But, you go back to the fact that they had to make this decision pretty much like 2 days before practice started, about 2 weeks before their first public scrimmage. So I think they felt like this was a safe choice, a guy who probably won't get them in trouble in any way, shape, or form, and a guy who the players like. And in this situation, the players, obviously, for the university, seem to be the primary concern at this point.
That does make sense. And Jeff, one more about that. Certainly 5-star recruit Brian Bowen is someone who's been mentioned here, not maybe directly per se in the report, but it's been talked about. What are you hearing about him? Is he going to be playing? Any speculation you can give us on Brian Bowen?
I would be absolutely shocked if Brian Bowen ever sets foot on the center floor or plays in a Louisville jersey. I mean, this is the type of thing where, the FBI is involved. We haven't even heard from the NCAA yet as far as anything that they're going to possibly do with this investigation. So, I think Louisville, to be safe, that's why I also think they'll fire their 2 assistants. I think they just want to be as safe as possible, because the one thing you have to remember about all of this is Louisville is already on probation for the escort scandal.
Sure. Yep.
So they, they're walking on very thin ice right now with the NCAA, and they do not want to hear that phrase "death penalty" start to come into the conversation.
Sure.
They're probably going to be very cautious with Brian and keep him out. He is still on campus and still taking classes and everything, but I would be really surprised if we see him play at all.
All right, well, let's get to the good stuff. Let's turn our attention to the court. Regardless of that, this team does, Jeff, have absolute top 20 talent. As seniors, Quentin Snyder, Anas Mahmoud, they give the Cardinals sort of an inside-outside leadership role there. Snyder is the leading returning scorer, 12.4 points, 2.7 rebounds, 4 assists per game. Mahmoud was a presence, only started 15 games and averaged about 18 minutes. Are these two guys ready to increase their play and lead this team now in this sort of, situation and get this to a top 20 level or better?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I know we'll get to these other guys here, I think that having Deng Adele and VJ King and Ray Spalding and some of the talented other guys on their roster will definitely help. I think Snyder, Quentin's a sort of an underappreciated player at Louisville. He's not going to be your leading scorer most nights. He's not going to be a top assist guy, although, he's improved every year in that category. He's gotten better as a shooter and has really just kind of evolved into a little point guard who can kind of get into cracks and crevices and make things happen. But he needs, he can't be the main guy. That's where Deng Adele and VJ King come into play. Anas Mahmoud, big-time shot blocker, has gotten a lot bigger. He's added a bunch of weight to his frame. He was playing at about 200 pounds last year, 7 foot 200, and that showed against bigger, more physical lineups. He is up to 230 now, so he's added a bunch of weight in the offseason to his frame. So we'll see if that has, if that'll help him in any way, shape, or form. I would think it would. But those two guys, their most valuable role on this team right now is they have been through so much over the last couple of years, and their leadership and experience will really help, especially Anas Mahmoud. He is a very vocal, super smart kid. He was studying engineering, realized it was quite a significant undertaking while playing college basketball, but
Sure.
Just a super smart kid and is a guy they can really rely on to help them kind of get through all of this.
Yeah, those are the seniors. Now, the two key players, like you mentioned, are the juniors, are Ray Spalding, and I know people are very high on Spalding coming into the year. 6'10", 215. He was sort of inconsistent last year, but the talent is certainly there. And of course, I think Louisville got a big sort of boost when Deng Adele decided to return. I think he's a tweener type of guy, Jeff, so I was glad to see him come back. It was 12 points, 4.5 rebounds, but at 6'7", 200 pounds, I think another year really makes a big difference for Deng Adele. So how do you see Spalding and Adele playing out this year? And can Adele, now that he's returning and he tested the waters, can he play himself into a possible first-round NBA draft pick next year?
Yeah, it's a great comment about being a tweener. I mean, that's the thing that Deng has that I think probably will continue to be attached to him is he doesn't do one thing great. He's not Donovan Mitchell, who, you knew as a freshman that he was just an explosive athlete who was going to, have these crazy dunks and keep you on his hip on these straight line drives and really be an effective scorer in that way. That's not who Deng is, but he's gotten a lot better. And, he really came into his own at the end of the season. He is a very effective driver of the basketball. He was getting into the lane pretty much at will, and I think he's going to be used at the 2 this year, sort of an interchangeable position with VJ King, who would be either the 2 or the 3. But, he's a guy who can definitely play his way into that conversation. He's considered sort of like a fringe second rounder. But yeah, I mean, I think he's going to be their go-to guy this year, and there's every reason to believe he can take that step.
One of those flammable players that teams need, some guy who can sort of fill it up really, really quickly, is VJ King. He's a big-time scorer. He was 42% from three-point range. typically freshmen don't always play a lot, particularly at a great program like Louisville. But he's another guy I think the Cardinal fans are looking to sort of take the next step. He was only 13 minutes per game last year, and I think there were some rumors he needed to work on his defense, of course. But is VJ King sort of an impact guy that can take a huge leap, even like a Spalding, same sort of area, and help Louisville on the offensive and defensive end?
Well, if Louisville wants to do anything this year, that they have to. Ray Spalding's got to be a guy who gets 10 to 12 points a game. I mean, he has to. And then VJ King, we saw him score 24 against Virginia. He was completely, just brimming with confidence a lot of times, but he would get yanked off the floor for his defensive kind of, not necessarily that he was struggling at defending his guy one-on-one, but more he wasn't getting through screens. He was mentally fatigued, and that drove Rick Pitino crazy. So he wouldn't be in the right positions, or just the little things that obviously you have to learn as you go at the college level, especially when you're playing UNC and Duke and teams like that. So, but he's a guy who's he's probably going to be a starter. I mean, it was only a question of if it would be him or Brian Bowen starting with the other guys, and obviously Brian Bowen I don't think is going to be around. So it's VJ's chance to step in and go from probably 13 to probably doubling his minutes, maybe playing even more than that. So he's, I don't want to put a Donovan Mitchell or Terry Rozier label on him, because those two guys went from, frequently used sixth men as freshmen to first round NBA draft picks. But I do think that VJ has that potential this year.
Yeah, that would be huge for the Cardinals. And if you look at their schedule here, Jeff, big early season game, the ACC Big Ten Challenge on November 28th. They are at Purdue. Those certainly will be two top 25 teams. There's Seton Hall, who should be very good this year. Indiana, of course, with Archie Miller there. And then the big matchup with Kentucky on December 29th. And the out-of-conference schedule is certainly tough. And, of course, in conference, a little bit of a break, Jeff, in that they only see Louisville, Duke, NC, and ND once, but only UNC is going to be home. That's a tough schedule for David Padgett's first year, no?
Yeah, and you're having to navigate just a ridiculously good ACC. I mean, I look at this list, and I did a power rankings. I don't even remember the last time I did them, but maybe June. And I was about through 8 or 9 teams, and I'm still thinking, these other teams that are kind of hunting to be sort of mid-table, mid-standings, to me look like tournament teams. And so, that alone is going to be real tough. But like you mentioned, I mean, Purdue on the road, that's they don't have Biggie Swanigan anymore, but still a really experienced team at West Lafayette, which will make it even tougher. I'm very intrigued to see Indiana and Seton Hall both play at Louisville. Indiana, obviously, with a new coach and Archie Miller. The Kentucky game is just always a tough one. We'll see if David Padgett has a better record against John Calipari than Rick Pitino did. But but yeah, so I mean, this is as tough as it's going to get for a guy stepping into a new job. 32-year-old who's never coached before, who's never been a head coach before. So this is it should be one of the top 5 or 10 schedules in the country by the end of the season. And if Louisville gets 22 wins or something like that before the tournament, I think David will have done himself a lot of favors as a head coach.
Jeff, we're out on the East Coast, Kentucky, Louisville, it doesn't get any better than that. Can you just give us a quick sort of insight? What is that game like? I mean, when Louisville plays Kentucky, what is it like? That it must be crazy. I mean, my partner and I are two, college basketball vagabond hoops junkies, so we love it. And someday we got to get down there for that game. But tell us, what is it like when those two teams play? It must be incredible.
Okay, so, I was just with someone last night who went to college in North Carolina at one of the smaller schools there, and she was talking about Duke versus UNC and comparing it. And I likened it to Duke UNC is two financial advisors wearing nice, suits who are kind of joking with each other. And Kentucky versus Louisville is like two people at the state fair just beating the crap out of each other. I mean, seriously, I mean, these schools, these fan bases, I mean, they brag over each other about every little thing. Like, the things that you just wouldn't even think a fan base would be super proud of, they talk about. Every single thing is, well, at least we're not you. At least we're not you. And it is, the last week has been just incredible. Kentucky Schadenfreude with all of the stuff going on here of just like, I mean, the hatred level is unparalleled. If you wear blue, for instance, I was told, we actually, speaking of the state fair, we go to the state fair every year. And, we had this little booth and this woman came up and she's head to toe in Cardinals gear and said, if you are wearing the color blue, I will not address you. I will not look you in the eye, and I will not talk to you. So it's like that. It's to the nth degree. It's insane.
Oh, that is great. I love it. I love hearing that passion. That's what it's all about. One more, Jeff, and we really appreciate your time with us. We'll just give you one more and get you out of here. I guess I'm going to go prediction on you. A lot of returning talent for Louisville. They have leadership. They have scores. They have size up front. Snyder's a great senior guard. I guess, what do you see as the expectations with David Padgett as a first-year coach with a team that has a lot of talent? Certainly we're going to root for him because we hate to see the kids in the school get punished for something like this. But how do you think they're going to do in the ACC, and how do you think they're going to do in the NCAA tournament?
Well, I guess part of it is it sort of remains to be seen what they're going to look like with David Padgett as their head coach. I would think that they're going to be pretty much the same style. I would guess that they're going to have to kind of, I hate the phrase dumb it down, but maybe like simplify things a little bit on the defensive end. But, obviously played a pretty complex defensive system. So the flip side to all of that is, as we were talking about earlier, they've got a bunch of experience on this team. And, that's going to help them a lot. Their talent level, even without Brian Bowen, to me is a top 4 ACC talent level. Obviously, Miami and Duke are going to be very, very, very talented. North Carolina will be right there. But I don't see why they can't finish in the top 4 or 5 in that league. And I think that they can win probably 22 games, 23 games, 24 games, somewhere in there, kind of similar to what they've done. And, get like a 3 or a 4 seed in the NCAA tournament and be a competitive team. But the biggest question again remains to be what else falls in all of this scandal stuff, and if it will impact the team at all. When will it happen? Because you just, if you're traveling to Chapel Hill or something and that happens, you don't want to be having to deal with that. So I think they've got all the talent in the world. They've got a lot of experience. I think they like having David Padgett, who's poised and smart. It's just a matter of kind of navigating the outside world a little bit.
Absolutely, and we're rooting for them. Louisville is one of the legendary college basketball programs in the country. Certainly, like we said, the kids, the school, and certainly for David Padgett, we want to see good things happen. So, Jeff, can't thank you enough for joining us today, folks. Jeff Greer from the Courier-Journal. Follow him on Twitter at JeffGreer_CJ. Thanks so much, Jeff. We'll be following you. You cover everything in Louisville there, Louisville basketball. So we'll be following you during the season, and best of luck. And thanks so much for coming on here.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Jeff.
I'm addicted to the appetite. Reserve a seat in the